Hey friends, Pastor David here with this week's Midweek Minute. So we concluded the series on why, making sense of God's will this past weekend. And rather than ask a question, which we have been asking, why do the innocent suffer? Why do my prayers go unanswered? Why can't I see God's will for my life? We use the word why in a statement. Why God's love prevails. I don't know if you use that word prevail much, but it's a powerful word and it means to prove more powerful than opposing forces. So when you think about it, God's love proves more powerful than opposing forces. We talked a little bit about Romans chapter 8 and that sentence in there where Paul says, if God is for us, who can be against us? We talked about that word for, meaning on behalf of. If God acts on our behalf, who can be against us? This God whose love in Jesus Christ will prove stronger than any opposing force in your life, in my life, in our life together as a church. God's love is going to have the final word in Jesus Christ. It will be Him that sets the agenda, not any of the things that come against us. In fact, what we talked about was that God has a way of taking the things that oppose us and bending them to serve His ultimate purpose. I hope that gave you a little bit of hope and perspective for the challenges that are coming into your life. Because the truth is, all of us face storms, and we don't face them just once in a lifetime. We face them sometimes a couple times a day. But in every one of those moments, my challenge to you was to make Paul's words, if God is for us, who is against us, to make them your words. If God is for me, who can stand against me? Boldly proclaim that when the storms of life come, maybe multiple times a day. And I challenged us to proclaim that until we know it. And once we know it, to proclaim it especially to people who are found in the midst of their own storms and need to know that God's love prevails. I shared with you a quote from Frederick Buechner, one of my absolute favorite quotes. Resurrection means that the worst thing is never the last thing. Think about that in terms of God's love prevailing. God's unfailing love for you and for me means that the worst thing is never the last thing. I hope that brings you some hope today. Last weekend was Pentecost, but because we were wrapping up the series of messages, I'm choosing to talk about the Pentecost story this coming weekend, Father's Day weekend. We get to celebrate a baptism this weekend, and it'll be wonderful at our 10:30 service on Sunday morning. But we're going to talk a little bit about this guy named Peter and how God takes a life that openly denies Him 3 different times and then makes him the preacher on Pentecost. What God can do with a life that is surrendered to Him. Wow, we'll talk about that this weekend. I hope you can be with us either Saturday evening at 6 o'clock for our more traditional expression of worship, or Sunday morning at 10:30 for our more contemporary expression, or at either one of our online campuses at 6 o'clock or 10:30. Until then, I hope you have a great week. Remember, keep looking up, and I'll see you later.